we want to ask a question of somebody. Let me pick on a man. Let me see. Yourself, sir. There, you. Don't know who you are. Are you religious? Yeah, you.
Not very, no.
Not very. How important is your religion to you?
It has its place. And
has its place?
Yeah.
Are you married?
Yeah.
Are you keen that your children are taught your faith in school?
I introduce them and take it from there themselves, hopefully.
Yeah, but you'd like them taught, would you, some religious instruction?
Some, yeah.
Okay, what about the man beside you? You, sir. How important is your religion to you, your faith?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, my religion is the way I live.
Yes. And would you want your children taught your faith in school by the teachers? In the normal course of events?
Don't really know.
Don't really know?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? How about the lady in front of you there? Yourself. Would you like your children taught or not taught?
But my child is growing up.
Yes, but when they were young?
Yes, I think so.
You wanted them? Yes. It was important to you?
Yes.
Okay, the reason I ask all those questions is that there are people who feel that religion should not be taught in schools, especially the accent on one particular faith in this country, the Roman Catholic faith. Now, Dave Alvey here on our soapbox is chairman of the campaign to separate church and state. The soapbox is designed for somebody with a bee in his bonnet, her bonnet, a deep conviction about something, and they want to get it off their chest. And the deal is that we allow them on the soapbox in the Late Late Show. They speak uninterrupted for 3 minutes. He'll explain what he's on about, and then I'll introduce to you the panel who will be discussing the matter with him. Right, Dave, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a growing number of Irish families feel that the education system discriminates against them. They see the system, particularly at primary level, as a monopoly controlled by the churches. They feel the system treats them as though they don't exist. As matters stand, only a handful out of 3,200 primary schools in the country are multi-denominational. The vast majority of schools are controlled by churches, mainly the Catholic Church. Parents are supposed to have the right to withdraw their children from religious instruction. However, this is flatly contradicted by another requirement of the Catholic Church, that a religious ethos must permeate the entire work of the school and the entire curriculum. What if you don't agree with the churches and don't want your children to be indoctrinated in any religion? At the moment, most parents faced with the dilemma have little choice but to send their children to denominational schools, where, like it or not, their children are taught religion. The system we have is one of compulsory religious instruction for most pupils, funded by the state. This isn't how the national school system was conceived of by those who campaigned for its establishment over a century and a half ago. It was supposed to be a national system, cherishing all of the children of the nation equally. What it has become is a sectarian system in which the rights of non-believers and people outside the mainstream churches are trampled upon. Indeed, there are many members of the mainstream churches who would prefer multi-denominational education for their children. Not only are these parents' rights ignored, but teachers are also discriminated against in not having the right to opt out of teaching religion. It is simply intolerable that this situation exists in our country at the end of the 20th century. So what's to be done about it? A first and basic reform would be to insist that religion be taught as a completely separate subject from the regular subjects. It should be given a place in the timetable that allows the children who are opting out to do so without embarrassment. Secondly, parents should be given a choice, as much as possible, between denominational and multi-denominational schools. This could be done by the Department of Education consulting all parents in a formal way on the type of school they want for their children. The creation of a nationwide network of multi-denominational schools, open equally to pupils of all persuasions and none, would provide parents with real choice, where precious none exists at present.
Dave Alvey, Chairman of the Campaign to Separate Church and State. On our panel we have Senator Joe O'Toole, General Secretary of the INTO. We have Sister Eileen Randles, who's Secretary of the Catholic Primary School Managers Association. She is a Loreto nun. And we have Father Pat Moore, who is Chairman of the National Association of Primary Diocesan Advisors. You don't stand a chance, Dave, actually. They're all from Kerry, believe it or not. I just discovered before we came on. All right, who wants to take up the running? Anybody?
Yeah.
Sister.
Yeah, I would just like to take up the point that Dave makes at the end, looking for more denominational, multi-denominational schools. The most recent and most comprehensive indication of policy that we have from all the education groups really is in the responses to the Green Paper. Now, it may not be generally known, and I'm not sure if Dave knows or not, but the bishops and the major superiors, in their response to the Green Paper, they have indicated very formally and seriously that they support parents who are looking for multi-denominational schools for their children on the very same basis as schools are available for the Catholic children. Also, the association that I represent, the Catholic Primary School Managers Association, we have also acknowledged that when the rules for primary schools are due to be revised, that they will take account of the fact that there are in the country at the moment a small but increasing number of multi-denominational schools. The difficulties and the restrictions that are imposed on these schools being developed, that is about finance, then location, temporary sanction, and so on. Those are restrictions and difficulties imposed by the state. The Department of Finance, probably even more than the Department of Education. Those difficulties are in no way imposed by the Church, so or the churches indeed.
Right, Father Pat Moore, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I'd say David has a very valid point of view there. And but like every point of view, it's a view from a point, and there are other issues like that need to be clarified. I'd be coming at it, I'd be arguing for the structural inclusion of religion, because I believe religion has got a very bad press, and you get the image sometimes that religion is bad for you, that it should come with a government health warning. And I find myself in a lot of schools, you know, that are actually doing their best to facilitate different points of view. I work most of the time in Kerry, and I find people, you know, if somebody who arrives and they say, I don't want my child indoctrinated in the Catholic faith. And what they usually find they do is the teacher presents them with the books and they say, look at that there, is there anything that's offensive to you? And very often they'll say, I'll go along with about 60% of that, I don't want any doctrine. And I find like one of the basic planks of religion must be tolerance. And coercion should have no part in religion. But we're in a time of transition, like, and there's a lot of old things going on that I couldn't stand over, you know. There's a lot of things that have happened that I couldn't stand over.
You're supposed to argue, Dave. Yes.
Yes, well, there's quite a few points I'd like to take up. I'll take up the last point first, if it's all right. The question of coercion, and Father has just made the point that coercion should not be a part of religion. And I think probably most civilised people would agree with that. But I think that the way the Irish education system is structured, we can't be sure that people are actually not being coerced in the matter of religion. And the example I'd give of that would be a number of parents of my acquaintance, and because there are so many of my acquaintance, I would assume that it's a fairly widespread phenomenon. Parents are under the impression that they have to have their children baptised before they can gain admittance to schools. Now, that is a situation where the children are baptised, even though the parents don't want the children to be baptised, because they think that is the only way to get them into school. Now, I'm sure there are explanations for these sort of phenomena, but the point I'm making is that the structure of our education system has really given people very, very little choice. Most people think this is the thing they must do, and to stand out against it and to stand up for your beliefs is an extremely difficult thing to ask any family in our system at the moment. Now, the point has been made by Sister that this is all the fault of the state, that the Church, of course, has none. Yes, that's true in the sense that the state ultimately is responsible for the system. But I think that a more honest explanation of how our present circumstances have emerged would have to include that the Church, the Catholic Church, put a lot of pressure on the state to have a certain type of system, and that they have a certain responsibility for the monopoly which we're now faced with. And I think
Dave, many people would ask, what's stopping you going off and building a school for a non-denominational school?
Okay, what's stopping me? Well, first of all, money.
Money, yeah.
I mean, this comparison, it was also made, a comparison between that, there should be an equal basis between the denominational school wishing to set up and the non-denominational. I think it's an unfair comparison. I think on one hand you have basically a multinational organisation with a corporate structure, which has a facility to raise funds and has a national organisation. And on the other hand, you have the isolated citizen. Now, the isolated citizen, all he or she wants is to have a school where their children can go and receive the sort of teaching that they approve of. They don't necessarily want to set up a school. They may not have the money, they may not have the time.
Does that not naturally follow in a country where 96 or 94 or 98% of the population are members of one particular church?
It does to a certain extent, and I think up until about 20 years ago, the population may have been possible to describe that way. But in the last 20 years, Irish society has been changing, and in the last couple of years, I mean, we've seen quite an acceleration of that change. I know for an absolute fact that we're now looking at an increasingly diverse society. Now, the main point I would actually make about that diversity is that it is time that the state found out exactly what parents want in terms of this.
Okay, let me ask Senator Joe O'Toole. Is it appropriate that teachers, Joe, should be indoctrinators of religion?
Well, the short answer to that is no, that they should never be indoctrinators, but I think in fairness that nobody has asked them to be that. But there are just a number of points I just want to clarify there that what Dave said. Just one of the reasons why a group couldn't set up a non-denominational school, just to explain to the audience, non-denominational is where there's no religion, multi-denominational is where all religions are catered for.
Yeah.
It's actually impossible to set up a non-denominational school in Ireland.
Why?
Because the rules are written in such a way that it must be the representatives of a religious group who seek a grant from the state. Now, I'm not arguing for or against it, I'm just making that point of view. Like, in listening to, so that's why the multi-denominations grew, because they had to represent a whole lot of denominations rather than no denominations. I think that's a conflict in the rule. Okay, it's sort of like, listen to the arguments like from the people on both sides here. It's very interesting. It was like kind of a broadcasting policy. Somebody has to implement it. Like, my members going to school every morning, and there are conflicts there which need to be ironed out. To put a very simple, yes, a very simple one. There's a friend of mine. She's a principal teacher of a large school, very active and involved in the educational area. She has chosen not to have her children baptised. Her daughter would like to become a primary school teacher and is very interested in it. Her daughter cannot become a primary school teacher in this country because she's not baptised. Now, again, I just think it's people.
Says that?
There's no method by which an unbaptised or a person who is not belong to one of the Christian religions can become a teacher. Now, just let me
is
come back
that
to
department
that.
or is that?
That's the structure. Now, you see, it's very interesting to say who's calling the shots here.
Yes.
Is it the church or the state? And we have stood back in the INTO for like years watching this debate, and we've examined it from all points of view. And we're trying to see how do we serve the parents of Ireland in terms of the parents want a choice for their kids. We provide the professional input. If tomorrow morning every school in Ireland changed from being let's say, if all the Church of Ireland schools in the morning and all the Roman Catholic schools changed to being state schools tomorrow morning, not an awful lot would change, Gay. They would still be more or less teaching the same subjects. They would still be more or less operating to the same curriculum because the curriculum is determined by the state. But where the conflict is this, and it was very rightly pointed out by Dave. Apparently, religion is to be treated like, by some people will say, like every other subject in the curriculum, which it cannot be. And in another, it said like that it's the only place in which parents can withdraw their pupils. Now, parents are supposed to be able to withdraw their pupils from one side of it. And on the other hand, we are told that it must vivify and be part of the teaching of every subject. Now, how would that can't be done. That's a conflict. Now, whether people agree or disagree, whether it's even if it's 99% of the people of the state are one religion, that is a problem that has to be sorted out before you come down on one side or the other. Now, how do you move on from there? You can't move on from there under the present rules. Like the situation is that if we take something, let's take a statement like God made the world. Now, to the vast majority of people in this country, that's something that they hear every day and they don't question. Some people would have questions about it. Now, let's say that we want to tie that into environmental studies. I'm trying to be practical now in a classroom situation. And let's say a teacher is teaching environmental studies and says, well, we're starting with the world and God made the world. Now, for 95% of people, that's not a problem. But there may be a Buddhist in the class. There may be a Jewish child in the class. There may be a child I don't know what the different religions believe. I'm just giving examples.
Yes, yes.
There may be a child from a religion who has never heard of God. And that immediately creates a problem. Now, you can't withdraw a child from environmental studies and thereby comply with the rule. There are huge problems there. It cannot be done. We have schools in Ireland, for instance, there are Jewish schools in Ireland. There's a Jewish school in Zion Road which is involved, and very involved education in this country over a whole period of time. Certainly, we have members there. I also have members in the north of Ireland. There's a Muslim school opened in this country. Now, there is the demand there. We would say in the INTOK that the parents call the shots in this one in the first place, not the church and not the state. That parents should have their choice met. Now, if their choice is non-denominational, that's the first point I'll make, they should be able to have that choice. If their choice is a Roman Catholic school, they should also be able to have that choice. The problem is created. Dave referred to the isolated citizen. Let's take a family, or let's take a small town anywhere in Ireland, where there's a demand for different kinds of school, and there are many different kinds of schools. Let's list a few of them. There are Gael Scoilna, there's a Muslim school, there's a Jewish school, there are Church of Ireland schools, there are schools of other religions, and there are a lot of Roman Catholic schools. Now, let's say in a town of a population of 1,000 people that there are 10 different types of schools required. Now, the harsh reality is it cannot be done.
Yes.
But it cannot be done for financial reasons, so therefore the rules must change in order to accommodate the views, and that can be done.
Okay.
And you asked me about teachers, and as the final point I make, teachers feel completely exposed in this one, Gay. It's a bit like Avioc na Gaelin, or the revival of the Irish language. Everybody thinks it's a great idea, but the only people who are expected to do it are teachers. The same with the teaching of religion. There are many parents who would say, well, yeah, I would certainly want my child to receive the faith that I did. But I'm no longer practicing myself, might be the position of the parent, but they still want the school to do it. And teachers feel very exposed in that situation.
As in so many other ways, they hand the whole thing over to the teachers. You look after the teachers.
I might also say, and this might shock a few people, but what teachers also feel very frustrated about is that very often the religious are washing their hands of the affair as well, and that they're not involved enough in the teaching of religion. There can be religious instruction and religious education. Religious education is vitally important. It's the final point I'll make. It's very important that people understand each other's religions. That's the way we breed tolerance in the society. Religious instruction is bringing people along in a particular faith. There's no reason why they can't both be accommodated. They're both accommodated in some kinds of schools. They're accommodated in, say, in schools where the teacher cannot be of the religion which represents the ethos of the school. So I would say, and we have situations as well, again, I might as well get it said, where teachers are teaching religion that perhaps they themselves don't have,
right,
but that they feel that the parents require this. It's not a problem for them.
Sister, why should the state fund the teaching of a religious doctrine for the Catholic Church? Why should they do that?
Well, now, first of all, they don't do it only for the Catholic Church. They do it for any of the churches that run the schools in this country. And Dave mentioned history earlier on. It isn't quite true to say that the crusade was for multi-denominational schools. In fact, the crusade was very definitely to establish different schools for the different churches. And the state in our constitution guarantees the right of parents to provide for the religious and moral education of their children. And the next article of the Constitution says, and they can provide this education either in their homes or in private schools or in schools recognised or established by the state. Now, the point that Joe is touching on is what we call in education circles the principle of integration. And it's an internationally accepted educational principle, a good teaching practice, particularly at primary level, but even also now in the junior classes of the second level. Sometimes it's called integration, more times it's called cross-curricular themes, where you integrate and one subject informs the other. And I would be saying, and I know there are very many teachers, and in fact I know the INTO supports the integrated approach to teaching, that on educational grounds, the religion and religious topics would be very naturally, unobtrusively, discreetly, gently integrated into the other subjects also.
Okay, none of that satisfies you, Dave, right?
Absolutely not, absolutely not. I mean, the last point about integration is this is the problem that has really annoyed a great deal of Irish parents over the last 20 years. I mean, in the last 20 years, we're supposed to have had some liberalisation. We've had Second Vatican Council and we've been told about all this tolerance and all the rest of it. It is only in the last 20 years that this integration has come in. So that before the liberalisation, so-called, parents were better off. They had actual rights to withdraw their children from religious instruction, and they knew they wouldn't get the religious instruction through the other subjects. This has only come in since 1970 in the curriculum.
Okay.
So we're going backwards.
There's a man here who wants to get in. Mr. McKenna, I do believe, yeah. Yes.
The system of integrated education in schools effectively brings about a situation where children are force-fed religion, whether they like it or not, or whether their parents like it or not. Well, if you can withdraw your child from strict religious instruction, that's fine, and you can do that.
Yes.
But if it's
that used to be in the old days, 12 to half 12.
Yeah, that's right, yes. No, you can still do that.
Yes.
But what you can't do is take your child out of an English class where religion has been taught through in an English curricular book. And there are certainly some books. One book that my son had to go through, at least 1/7 of the book contained religious and overtly Catholic material. Now,
and you objected to that?
Of course I objected to that. And when I couldn't get much relief, I contacted the Department of Education, and they told me that I asked how could I protect my constitutional right.
Yes.
And they said, well, you can't. You can take your child out of formal religious instruction, but you most certainly may not take your child out of English class.
Yeah.
So what you had a situation where my children were force-fed religion, whether the teachers liked to do it or not. But it happens in two ways.
What did you eventually do?
Well, all I could do, it was a struggle with 3 children going through school. It was just a struggle to uphold my ethos, because I think that my ethos is just as important as the Catholic ethos. So it was a matter of the children, first of all, they were abused.
Abused?
Yes.
Because they were...
Yes, because they were different. But they were certainly abused, and that was physical beatings.
Yes, mind you, many people would accuse you then of wanting the minority to dictate to the majority, since everybody else in the school or in the class or whatever, their parents were quite happy with the status quo.
Well, I think that if we live in a state which is going to impose majority rule as distinct from democracy, then we should be clear about that. We're not talking about majority rule or the imposition of majority opinion on minority opinion. Surely democracy means that everybody has a place in society.
Joe O'Toole would say reality is reality, practicalities are practicalities.
Can I do a bit of referee here, like on both sides?
Yeah, all right,
It's fair, like the two, I've listened to the points being made about both sides there now. Like, first of all, to say about religion being treated like every other subject, like Sister Eileen said, like, it's not treated like every other subject. It's different. There are special rules about religion which do not apply to any other subject. Like, for instance, first of all, that parent can withdraw their child. Secondly, that it has to be taught at a specific time. Thirdly, it's the only subject for which no visitors are allowed into the classroom. Fourthly, it must vivify, in other words, make live all other aspects of the curriculum. And fifthly, it's the only aspect of the curriculum for which the teaching time of the month may be reduced by an hour in order to allow religious exercises. That's one side. On the other side now, what our friend is saying there, I think, is going over on the other side. I just could not accept at any time that a teacher would be using a textbook that would have 70% overtly Catholic material. No, but I just want to be clear about it, because the problem...
1/7.
1/7.
1/7, yeah. I'm not sure how you would... You see, for instance, if there was an article or a lesson on St. Patrick, that's not necessarily Catholicism. I mean, if we do the Second World War and somebody does something on Mussolini, can you do the Second World War without doing Pius XII, Mussolini and Hitler? But like, the fact of doing something about those does not mean that they're overtly anything. It's the way they're taught, Gay. And I would say that from the teacher's point of view, we have a huge problem here, because like, my members would feel very distressed by the thoughts that they were being, in some sense, represented as proselytizing one way or another. They're trying to find the balance on behalf of parents.
Okay,
and make sure that what the parents want is done, what you have asked for about your child, that you would try to accommodate. The point that I agree with you is that we teachers can't just do it at the moment. We're making the system work despite total anomalies in the rules. It's a credit to the teachers
Let
that can
Father
do
Pat,
that.
Can I say that, you could carry it to extremes, like, and you can say you can't salute yourself in the Irish language without mentioning God, like, and you drop that, you could carry it to extremes. And, like, teachers are doing a mighty fine job, like, in trying to get the balance that Joe was talking about.
And are you saying then that a person like this man here can't really be accommodated? Is that what
Joe,
you're saying?
Gay, it's very difficult because our whole culture,
Yes.
our language carries Christianity and if you wanted to call it Catholicism in the country. Let me give you an example which illustrates the difficulty the teachers have. In a school in the west of Ireland a couple of weeks ago, when the fine weather started, the teacher, like teachers have done for years, started the poem Anish Tacht an Arig Began Loig Dal Conchina. And I'm sure everyone in the audience could say the next line. Now, the next day, there was a protest from a parent because of the fact that the next line contained the reference to the Feast of St. Bridget. Now, one has to sympathise with the difficulties of parents, but it is impossible for us to really to live in Ireland, I would say. I mean, it's part of our civilization and our culture.
It's part of what we are, is the phrase you're thinking of, sister.
Okay,
it really is. I'll give this a little more time. I understand there are phone calls, there are people in the audience want to get in. Let me take a break here and come back to us after this, all right? Take a break. Thank you. Good morning. Very good. Right, now we better get the cake out, kids. Can we do that? 30 seconds. Yes? Jimmy Greeley. That's one from way out west. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Did I hear you have phone calls or not? 1 to 5. 1 to 5 and no order yet. But there are people here in the front row who want to get in as well. All right, fine.
10 seconds.
Okay, 10 seconds. All right, that'll be grand. Yes, thank you. That would be of help. Right enough. You're doing well there, folks. Joe O'Toole is always full of chat, absolutely. All right. What do you want to say? Multi-denominational
That's
schools.
right.
Yes,
yes, I'm
what about
chairperson
those? Yes.
of Educate Together, and I just
Yes.
want to make the point that there are 10 multi-denominational schools in the country, and I'm very pleased to hear Sister Eileen reiterating the points that the bishops have made and that the CMRS have made. But I would like to make the point that it is very difficult, in spite of the goodwill that's all around for parents who would like to have multi-denominational schools. As Sister Eileen has said, we're not playing on an even
level
pitch.
playing field, yes.
The multi-denominational schools don't get capital grants in the early stages, and it is a very difficult task for a small group of parents to get the money together that they need
Were you
to find
involved in
premises.
Dalkey?
I was indeed. I was a founder member in
That was
Dalkey.
a long fight. That was.
Well, we are still
you-
doing very well. There are
Yes, you
10
got there in
schools
the
now.
end. Yes. Okay, very good. What do you want to say?
I wanted to talk about a survey that we did of parents. Dave said about asking parents what they wanted.
Yes.
But I'm from the Federation of Catholic Primary School Parents, and we decided to ask parents what they wanted. So we did a survey last November, and we reached 16,200 families. We asked them to answer just 3 simple questions. The first was, do you want a Catholic ethos in your children's school? And 94% said yes. And we asked, do you want your children to have Catholic religious instruction? And 96% said yes. And the third question was, do you want the proposed Education Act to allow for parents to be involved in the education system? And 96% said yes.
That begs the question, who were these people?
Well, they were spread over 24 counties and 16 of the Dublin postal districts.
That many, I see.
Yes.
Okay, so you're happy then that the majority...
Well, the majority do want Catholic schools
and
and
you're
Catholic
saying
religious
these people were
instruction.
of all religions and none and...
Well,
and
no, they were Catholic schools.
Ah.
But the reason we did the survey was
Yes.
because media coverage was implying that there was a huge number of families
Catholics.
having to send children to schools run by the churches who didn't really want to. They just had no choice.
I see, so you wanted
So
to refute
we
that
wanted,
argument.
well, we just wanted to give parents an opportunity to articulate their wishes.
Yes.
I mean, we would be for parents' choice.
Okay. Did you want to say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm also a member of the Federation,
Yes.
and at the end of the day, I think what we're saying is, even as a Catholic parent group, that it's down to parent choice. If parents want multi-denominational schools, that's their right. If they also want Catholic schools, that's their right as well. And basically, that's in the Constitution.
Yes, but Dave would say, would he not, that the Catholic schools are getting undue assistance from the state in order to do what they want to do, whereas he can't have that help. Is that so, Dave?
Yes, I'd like to.
No school is getting too much assistance.
Actually, Gay, I agree that there should be parents should be asked, and if people say that they want to have Catholic education, I'm prepared to say yes, okay. We're not sort of want to take rights away from people. Actually, I would applaud that association for having actually asked parents. That's what we want to happen too. And I think if I got your figures right, you mentioned that 6% of your survey would like some alternative to the Catholic school, a small number like that.
6%.
94.
Yeah, you said 94% went with you, yes.
Yes, well, 6% would mean something like 30,000 children. I mean, that would need another 180 multi-denominational schools. There's only 10 at the moment. And I think that was quite a conservative survey.
Okay.
So we're talking bigger.
What line? Line 2. I'll take line 2. Hello, line 2. Line 2. Line 2? Not there. Okay, thank you. Line what? Will I try line 3, line 4? Nothing else. Anybody else want to get in there? Yeah, sorry, I'll take you.
I'm a teacher. I'm currently
Yes.
working in a multi-denominational school. And I would like to pick up on a few points that have come up. I would support that person who's sitting in the front row who talked about religious references in his children's textbooks. I know that myself from working as a teacher. Many of the English reading schemes are riddled with references, and particularly disgraceful is the Oral Irish Language Programme, which is produced by the Department of Education itself. Many of the actual
class lessons are overtly of Roman Catholic, promoting Roman Catholic beliefs. The other point I'd like to make is to support Joe's view about the lack of access to teacher training for, ordinary citizens in the country. Like Joe, I have a daughter who is of an age where she might be considering a career for herself. She is not baptized. She will not get access to the college. I myself had to use subterfuge and lies to enter the training college. I passionately wanted to be a teacher. I was already a mature woman. I was the mother of 2 small children. I knew that I had a facility with children and wanted to become a teacher. My first hurdle was getting into the training college. Having achieved that through subterfuge, on graduation, when I went for my first job, I was asked questions directly related to my religious beliefs and how I would teach religion in the school. I had no alternative but to lie my way into a job. I was very uncomfortable in the school I was working in. I had a very good working relationship with my colleagues. I was afraid to reveal I felt like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I felt it would bring me into conflict with my colleagues and damage a relationship that was very valuable to me. I felt I was doing an injustice to the children who were in my care because I was teaching a set of beliefs to them as faith that, that was totally in conflict with my own views on life. That was very difficult, and I felt very bad about it at the time. I also felt that my promotional, that was not that important to me, but I would never be able to be a principal had I revealed that I, also had non-religious beliefs.
And what would you say to someone who said that's part of the deal in this country? It's a predominantly.
I just don't accept that. We are civil servants. I mean, we are akin to civil servants. We are providing a service for the state as teachers. There is no country, certainly in Western Europe, that has a system like that debars, people.
Is that true?
Well,
anybody go with that, sister?
The state does not provide the system here. That's the plain fact. The Constitution of the country says that the state shall provide for free primary education. And since the beginning of the primary system in 1831, the state, it was at that stage, as we recall, the British government was here, they laid it down as an absolute condition that, first of all, the application to have a school established would come from the local clergy, that the local clergy had to provide the site and the cost, part of the cost of building and running the school. And this, in a sense, the churches all the churches, and I must say I regret we haven't a representative of the Church of Ireland here, the churches have in fact provided education for the people of the country with state aid.
Because there was no one else to do it.
Yes, that's the point.
There was no one else to do it.
You would have to look at, there's no doubt about that's absolutely true, what Eileen says, but in terms of working on what the Constitution says, if all the religions pulled back tomorrow morning and said, we're not going to build any more schools, the state would then be, under the Constitution, required to provide for free primary education itself. And that's the Constitution hands it to the parents or to a religious group, a denominational group and others, or else the state would have to pick up the slack itself if it didn't do it. And the problem is created by a lack of choice. You see, isn't it extraordinary the consensus is here tonight? Like the Catholic authorities say that they are in favour of having access to non-denominational and multi-denominational for those people who wish it and where it can be provided. The Church and State people agree with that. Now, who's blocking it then at the moment? Like, I have a problem with members of mine who are afraid for their careers in a situation like where they no longer perhaps believe in the faith, but they still feel that there's a job there. And I want to say that any of the religious groups that I've dealt with have been extraordinarily tolerant and flexible. No teacher has lost his or her job because of that difficulty, but that doesn't take from the problem that they would have, or for the lack. Let me say this much, or for the lack of promotional prospects. But I have a very clear line in it, that if anybody ever moves against any of my members because of the religious area, that I would certainly fight on their behalf, and the organisation.
What do you mean by
Life is very difficult for teachers who actually have the courage at the moment in the system to say, Principal, I don't believe in teaching this religion. I'm doing wrong by teaching it because I don't actually share these beliefs. Life is very, very difficult. Every day they have to fight it. They're isolated. You see, there is no structure for everybody has to sort this out themselves. Parents, teachers. It's one way. There's tolerance here. There's no tolerance there. It's just chaos. There's no structure so that the different beliefs of our citizens can actually, people can be respected for the beliefs they have.
Yeah, what is an Irish citizen? Isn't it true though, Dave, now just to get exactly right, anybody who leaves the field in anything is always going to be isolated. But I would have to state, now for the record, because I deal with this all the time, and those sensitive ones come on my desk. I haven't come across any case where a denominational group have moved to dismiss a teacher because of that difficulty. I'm just saying that they've always managed to come to some arrangement. But that doesn't take from the real problem, which was outlined in the sense of things like promotional prospects, things like becoming principalships. That is where the difficulty arises for teachers. And from my point of view, the rules have to be changed.
Well, let me ask you the question, though. You just said there's a great consensus in the studio and so on, so who's blocking it? Answer your own question.
The answer
who's
is
blocking
it's the rules of the department that are blocking it at the moment. And it's now a matter for the state to move on this particular issue. We've heard from the churches here tonight, and we've heard from the Church and State people. Yeah. Every group here tonight, there's nobody so far has spoken who objects to the idea of parental choice being made available where it can be made available. Yeah. So why is it not there at the moment?
Yes, Father.
I think the other thing that's blocking it is a lack of awareness. Like you began tonight by asking 3 members of your audience about religion, and people don't really think about it. They take it for granted. They take it as a service. And it's come to the situation, like in some Catholic schools, where parents take it for granted that teachers will prepare their children for sacraments, that they feel that they have to take them, to drive them to Mass on Sunday morning for them,
Yeah.
Yes.
And the people are not talking about this. And when was there a public debate like we're having tonight before? And I think it's terribly important that we get talking about this.
Okay, line 4. Hello, line 4. Hello.
I'd just like to say that tonight I've heard the word control regarding religion in school, Catholic religion in school used a lot, and I never saw my religious education as having been controlled. I saw it as quite a healthy, beneficial education towards me, and I'm not, overtly religious or anything like that, but I saw it as a beneficial education, and I wouldn't like it to be downtrodden tonight. And I'd also like to point out that if you look towards a country like America, which has many non-denominational schools, they have what I would call a non-moral society. And I would say that our system, while it has flaws, is definitely preferable.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much.
Could I just add a little bit to that point? I think that there's a broader issue here, the whole relationship of religion to society.
Yes.
And I think if we look internationally, there are headlines there like, religion was suppressed in different countries, and look at the way it asserted itself in Eastern Europe and places like this. You have the Secretary of Education in England saying things like, it's very hard to teach morality in a society that isn't religious. It's easier, not saying that you have to be religious to be moral or anything like that, And I just think that maybe the way of religion has been perceived isn't necessarily the right way. And that religion can open, it isn't something crippling and that is a burden on you. It can be something life-giving, introducing people to mystery and introducing people to, all sorts of wonderful things,
Okay,
what about that?
No, I just say, I think a question should be asked at this stage. Is the morality that is being taught to Irish people through religion, is it producing the goods?
Certainly, if you see the business world, it isn't.
Yeah, I think it's a point worth making. A lot of parents would actually like to see morality,
but
in other words, proper ethics taught in the school, independent of religion, and there might be better results from that.
David, I wouldn't see religion as just morality. Religion is about opening people up to mystery, of just saying that they're not one-dimensional. And what I'm really frightened of is that if that dimension of people is forgotten about and not dealt with structurally in schools, that you'd leave yourself wide open to the worst kind of fundamentalism, things people like David Koresh and what went on there, or you could leave yourself open to...
Well, we have the experience of the multi-denominational schools. They have operated outside of that framework, and they've been quite successful against a lot of obstacles.
They have a religious education program, Gay, which it opens up. And
which is all religious.
Yes, and which is the kind that would worry me, you see, if we don't arrive at this tolerance. The idea of somebody coming up to a school and objection to a reference to St. Bridget is as bad as, that's a racist response. But it's a response of frustration from people. If we open, children are entitled to know as much about Ramadan, whether they, as anything else. We need to actually teach them this.
I would like to say that there's an increasing acknowledgement now that spiritual poverty is every bit as damaging as material poverty. And when you think back to our parents and our grandparents, they had a very hard life, many of them, but they had great faith and great hope, and they had great love for God and their neighbours and their families. And they survived.
But he
now,
doesn't want
I am
it, sister.
asking,
He doesn't want it.
are we going to deprive our young people of that formation by trying to take all references to God out of schools?
Are you going to give it to them whether they like it or not?
I would insist that part of the teaching of the Catholic Church is tolerance for minorities, for others. But the danger is that in protecting the minority and in respecting their position, that somehow we'll finish up depriving the majority of their rights. We all rejoiced last week when the Muslim school was opened, and there was a great description of it in the press during the week, where they have posters showing how children pray, or Muslims pray, and the facilities for the ritual for prayer and so on, and we rejoice with that. Are we to deprive the Catholic children of those same helps and assistance in the schools? And if I could say before I just conclude, religious education involves formation as well as information. And all of us, the bishops and all of us, will be doing our level best to make sure that the right of children to receive that religious education in schools will be enshrined in our laws, because we know that the vast majority of parents want that. And at the same time, we will be insisting that the minority are assisted in every possible way.
Okay, line 5. Yes, line 5.
Hello, I just wanted to say that I first of all want to agree with your speaker Dave and with what Senator O'Toole said, and say that I was educated by Sacred Heart nuns and my husband was educated by Jesuits, and we would now, as parents of 2 young children, prefer our children to go to non-denominational schools or multi-denominational schools, because we feel they would learn more respect for other people's religion, and secondly for the values of other people's religion. And we'd really prefer our children to learn basic Christian values. We didn't learn basic Christian values from our religious orders.
You learned Roman Catholic values.
Yes, and there was too much emphasis on religion, really not on people and people's values. And we both really saw very little tolerance in the Catholic Church of any minority attitudes at all.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. Thank you. Can I just go back to my friend for one last word? Yes.
Yes, I would like the religious representatives to answer Dave's question, which was in accommodating those of minor or lesser or no religious. Do they propose to teach it in the event that they can't sort it out? Do they propose to teach religion to these children, whether they like it or not? No. And secondly, Gay, I would just make the point that
the sister is saying no.
No, well then that's okay. Well, and secondly, I think that the lead has been kept on the whole thing. Number one, you have a teacher tonight who was saying that that subterfuge got her into that.
Yes.
I think that there are thousands of parents in this country who send their children to school and allow them to have religious education, even though they don't want it. because they know that the consequences for the children in the schools may be very severe.
Yes.
But isn't it's very interesting to tie down the things that have been said here tonight, like that there's no question of excluding anybody from anything. There's no question of taking back from anybody their great cultural heritage, which includes their religion, whether it be the Catholic religion or whatever, and the celebration of the Catholic religion is as important as the celebration of the Muslim religion. But it certainly, I think that this discussion has brought it forward quite substantially, Gay, because I certainly will be looking forward to sitting around a negotiating table when we look at the rules for national schools to try and put into practice the sense of pluralism, which has come through, I must say, very, very generously tonight, in the sense of the discussion that there has been very little conflict here, except there's argument about the system that's there. And I agree with the last speaker. There's a problem in the schools for teachers who have problems, for parents who have problems, for people who are trying to introduce an openness. They must be looked after and they must be helped. It's about education. Remember, the final thing I'd say about it is it required under the Constitution to be delivered by the parents, and the state's role in delivering a minimum level of education does not include a reference to religion. It's actually changed in that particular subsection of it. So what we have to do is to make sure that in the middle of all this debate, from a teacher's point of view, that our children get the best possible chance of education.
Okay. Give me two things that you would have done, Dave, just to finish up.
Well, two things I'd do. First of all, I'd give every parent in the country the opportunity of formally registering with the Department of Education what type of school they would want. And that would leave figures available, so we'd all know exactly. We're not arguing about surveys. That done. And secondly, I would like to see religion as a subject, completely separate. And I think that is a challenge that catechetical experts like Father Pat and others can rise to quite easily. And I mean, this cosy pluralism has actually, I mean, I don't fully agree with Joe. We're good at this chat about pluralism, but it's translating it actually down to the ground. It hurts.
That's the hard part, though.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And I don't think
it's surely something that we have to work at, to ensure that pluralism, like I certainly don't want to see intolerance growing into the system. There's been enough of it, and I think we're moving back from it, and I see tonight a lot of openness to move back.
Yes, but on the ground part of the problem is that a great number of parents are simply not interested in their children's education. In other words, I mean, they throw it over to the schools and they say, teacher and sister, you do all of that, that's your job, you take it.
What Sister Randles said earlier, give an example of what I consider to be...
pick up that point that you've made.
Sorry, yes, finish what you're saying.
What I consider to be, I mean, we have a real problem. There is a cultural insensitivity. People perhaps don't realise that they're so insensitive. And I think that remark that Sister Randles made earlier about the sister, the Bridget Cross or something like that, I mean, she's giving an extreme example to try and ridicule people who have real problems.
Well, the ultimate extension of what you're arguing is this, you see, Dave. The ultimate extent is that kind of occurrence, that somebody can walk up and say, I don't like the third line of this poem.
The only reason that people are so uppity about that is because they feel that they're not there.
Joe said it's out of frustration.
And they come down to the teacher.
Yes.
It's always the teacher.
Yes.
Like
and
the teacher,
that's the point I want to pick up.
That's where I have the difficulty.
Yes.
Like, I mean, our members are trying to make the professional input. They're required by the rules to do certain things, and they can't win on both sides of this argument. And what we want is an openness. We want to be allowed to get on with our job, and we feel the parental choice must be part of that.
One last comment.
Yes, Gay. My last comment is to say how much this country owes to the teachers of this country. And I think it would be very remiss of us tonight to end this debate or discussion without acknowledging the extraordinary work that has been done by those who taught us and by those who are now currently teaching in the schools, particularly in the area of nurturing the faith. And the plea I would make is that we must not leave it all to our teachers, but that we need to support them. The parents must support them, the parish community, our priests. It has to be a community project.
Okay, I'll let Father Tom have a last word.
I'd agree with Eileen. And is there anything as open or as beautiful as a child's mind or heart? And you know, we all want what's best for children.
But he says it's not the best, you see, Father. That's the problem.
I'm not saying about religion, just I'm saying we all want.
I
and I think there's a debate about to start in this country. And I hope, not like other debates, that the extremists don't take up. There's a middle ground there, and there's a lot of work that's been done on the ground. And I hope that we can knuckle down to do that.
There we leave it. Joe and Sister and Father Tom, thank you. Joe, thank you very much indeed. That's all we have time for now. Come back to us after this break to Eurovision Song Contest entry. We'll see you then. Thank you very much. Thank you.